All right, I'm gonna look at the accelerator pump on this thing and see if I can make it spray more of a fine mist rather than just a bunch of big droplets. So I undid the three screws on here. Oh, there's four actually. There's the accelerator pump screw, which I forgot about. So I gotta get that off of there. And okay, drop all that. Okay, now there's the entire thing. Accelerator pump. That screw can just get tossed down there. Okay, so now what's happening here is this thing is not really spraying properly. So I'm going to pull this rod out of here. Now you can see up top here, that rod goes right to the mechanism. Whoops. Oh, I got too carried away there. And this little adjuster screw here, if you turn it out, it gives more gas to the accelerator pump. So I've heard that the rod here can develop gunk and corrosion on it and stuff like that, and make it just kind of hold up when you're using the when you crack the throttle. This will kind of drag instead of sliding smoothly. So I'm probably going to clean it up with some 1000 grit sandpaper or some carb cleaner. It seems pretty smooth. There is a bit of gunk on here causing a bit of resistance. Also, let's see. Now, let's have a look at this accelerator pump. Okay, that's trying to suck fuel from the bowl. Try and cover that hole. Hard to do everything with one hand. See, that sprayed a nice mist that time, but it does not do that when it is on the bike and it's running. It just sprays a bunch of droplets or a stream. So I'm just wondering what the heck is going on there. It's like maybe it's just not pushing the rod hard enough or fast enough. I'm not sure. So having done irrigation systems for years, I know that if you have a sprinkler head that just isn't spraying very well, very far, or there's just too much water coming out and it's kind of just trickling, or like, you know, it's like having a garden hose wide open and then putting your thumb over the end. You're not increasing the pressure, you're increasing the velocity by way of kind of choking the flow and forcing the same volume of water through a smaller passageway. So this accelerator pump, really, there's only two things that can be wrong with it. Either the nozzle is clogged, or it's too large, like the opening is too large, and it's just not creating enough back pressure and velocity with the fuel coming out. Or the other thing is the pump itself, the pump mechanism is too weak and it's not able to deliver enough volume through that nozzle to actually atomize the fuel coming out. So it's either, and just kind of manually using the thing, like pushing it with my hand there, it sprayed a nice mist. I've never seen it do that on the bike. So I wonder maybe if it's this this mechanism here. I mean, that spring seems pretty good still. I don't know what else would be causing that. This stuff's pretty filthy, obviously, so that's probably not helping things. But it still moves freely. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to have a better look at things here. Now, apparently sometimes people will tap this rod in on the top of this stem where the nozzle is. You can see how tiny that nozzle is in there. How tiny that nozzle actually is. Right? So if you tap on the top of that, it's going to close it in too much. So apparently you're supposed to put those in by tapping on the top of this hex shape here. Right? So, and I mean, having all these O-rings old and crushed, that's probably not doing any good for this thing either. So another thing that I noticed before is whoever was in this carburetor, last time I took it apart, this was turned sideways. So it was spraying the side, or maybe it was spraying forward. It was spraying totally the wrong direction. So I had to put a socket on here and turn it till it was facing the engine like it's supposed to be. So yeah, I'm gonna spray some carb cleaner through this nozzle. Okay, so I popped the top off of that and lost a bunch of stuff, which I wasn't planning on doing. Done this a few times, so that tiny ball bearing there, I'm just gonna try and catch it right there. Now, what the heck? Try not to drop this stuff again. Okay, so that's the accelerator pump assembly. So there's a tiny spring in here. That ball bearing goes right in there. Now those O-rings are pretty flat and ruined, but like nothing's leaking. I'm not sure how big of a deal those are. I should probably put new ones in, but I don't have new ones right now. So here's the diaphragm. And there is a spring that goes on top of that, underneath of that. Diaphragm goes here, like that. And then the rod pushes down on the top of the diaphragm, like that. And when it's all assembled, it sucks fuel in through here and pushes it out through here. So, let's see. Now, where is that? Okay, I'm going to try not to lose everything here. I don't really have a place to work right now because my garage is too much of a mess still. Okay, dump that crap out. I've seen people on YouTube almost have a meltdown trying to deal with all these little bits and pieces in these things. And there's only a few little parts. It's not a big deal, you know. It's like pretty simple enough. You don't need to lose your mind and freak out. Because as you can see, it's not a big deal. You know, as long as you remember what goes where. Put that spring down there with the other ball bearings. Now, so this is the inlet. That is the outlet through that nozzle right there. I'm going to spray some carb cleaner through there. I can hold everything here. Gotta try to hold it all with like no hands. Okay, that's definitely clear. This is kind of tricky. So the nozzle seems clear. So the only other issue is either these O-rings that are flattened out aren't doing a good enough job, and it's allowing some blow by here between the inlet and outlet. You know, trying to bubble back into there maybe. That's kind of what I saw. Like when I was operating the accelerator pump by hand, is it was bubbling through the bowl. So that's probably my biggest issue with trying to build enough pressure in here to atomize the fuel in here. That's probably what the issue is. So I should probably get a rebuild kit for this thing, for the accelerator pump at least. And that'll probably fix most of the problem. I know those kits do come with a new spring for the diaphragm, this spring here. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can make this a bit stronger just by stretching it just a tiny little bit. And that will also build a little more pressure on the diaphragm. Probably not really the proper thing to do, but it is what it is at this point, you know. I'm a desperate man. So let's see. Spring goes in here. Diaphragm goes like so. And then all the bits go in these things here. So this tiny spring goes in the further out port. And a ball bearing goes on top of there, and one in here. And then with the diaphragm in place, with the spring underneath of it, that all goes right in there, like that. You just want to make sure there's no gaps, no weird gaps, and make sure you got a nice even gap the whole way around. Okay, now I got the screws here. These two short screws go here. And then the long mounting screw goes through the other one. Okay, now this rod here. I saw a guy on YouTube here. He said to put a bit of Never-Seez on this rod when you install a new one. I'm not going to bother with that right now. I might later at some point when I actually like spend money on fixing this carburetor instead of just continually patching it together. It's nice and clean now though. So last time I took this thing apart, I cleaned all the stuff. Okay, that's a nice strong feeling spring now. So now I will put this whole thing back on and fill it up with fuel and try that accelerator pump again and see what happens. And whoops, had the camera twisted the wrong way. And just so you know, my secret weapon on this is this small ratchet here with a bit and an extension for the back bolt there, because it's kind of hard to get in. So you got 3 short screws and then the long screw that goes through the back of the accelerator pump down here and all the way up through the bowl. So there, well, that's where it is. Okay. Yeah, they're pretty straightforward, these things. That's one of the reasons they're so popular, is because they're pretty basic carburetor. My problem is I'm too impatient. Usually working on this thing when it's hot still. And as you can see, I'm too impatient to take the whole carb off the bike because I don't really need to. I mean, you pop the bowl off like this, you can take your jets out and everything, and which is what I did last time. So, but you know, one day, it's just inevitable. I'm going to have to rebuild this whole thing. Got our 2 front bolts and then the 2 back bolts. Oh, I don't think my petcock works very well because still gas in that line there, despite having a bolt in there. That's just one of my backing plate mount bolts that I've got in the fuel line. 5/16 bolt. Works pretty well. May not need that. No, I do need the extension actually. So it's just going to be too hard to get to. Oh, come on. Can I get there? No, I can't. Take the extension off. Okay. Now the fuel line. Spill gas everywhere probably. Yep. Oh, and there goes my clamp. Now these here clamps are nice for smaller line. They are a bit of a pain to get off though and back on, because when they squish down, they don't really unsquish the clamp very easily. But I do like them for smaller line because they're not as likely to like shred your hose or to squish it weirdly and unevenly. I did have a socket around to fit that, but Okay, overflow tube. Okay, turn the gas on. Listen to everything flow. Oh, I got a leak. Okay, something's leaking. Something's leaking. Pretty bad. Stupid accelerator pump. Okay, I'll have to figure that out. All right, that was the problem. I was not careful enough when I put the plunger back in, the diaphragm. So I'm gonna fix that. Hopefully it doesn't leak again. Okay, so yeah, my diaphragm was all messed up there. So I fixed that, and I just poured some gas into the bowl and tested it kind of by hand again. And yeah, I can clearly see that the accelerator pump is pushing fuel backwards through the inlet, as well as the outlet, the nozzle in the carburetor. So I think my issue is that those little O-rings are just squished beyond being useful anymore. And once I fix that, it'll probably spray a nice mist instead of a bunch of big droplets and a stream or two like it always has before. I guess I should have bought a rebuild kit for that thing a while ago and just fixed it, especially seeing as how many times I've had it apart now. But I've just never been able to justify the money that they want for like a few little O-rings and a couple tiny springs and ball bearings, you know, and a couple of jets, which I don't think I really need jets. Like, the jets seem fine. I've watched all the videos from S&S on how to set your carburetor and, you know, determine if your jets are oversized or undersized. These all seem just perfect. So both of them, right? The main jet and the pilot jet. But I don't know. I should probably just bite the bullet and spend the money on a rebuild kit. I don't even remember how much they cost, but it's kind of a rip-off because of how few parts it actually is in there. But it is all specialty stuff, so that's the way it goes. So I'm going to get this back together and see if there's any kind of difference in how that thing works. All right, everything's done up. Fuel is on. Everything's dry. That's good. Yeah, still just spraying a bunch of big crap. So I'm gonna fire this thing up and just see what it does. That's a little better, but a little bit better, but not really. Now I think my adjustment is turned up too much. So I'm going to set it out to factory specs here. So I'll turn it till it's lightly seated. Of course, I'm fighting with that old spring. That's that lightly seated right there, and then 2 turns out. So half, 1, 1.5, 2. Yep. Same thing. A little bit better, but basically the same. All my neighbors are probably real angry with me now. I mean, I had the garage door mostly closed, but yeah, so it's doing the same exact thing. So, but that's quite a bit better. You know, it's just not really building enough pressure to really atomize that fuel. So I'm positive, like I'm pretty darn confident that those 2 O-rings being flattened out and worn is the problem, because that is exactly part of the valving in the accelerator pump mechanism, is those 2 O-rings actually stopping flow going backwards to build maximum pressure through that nozzle. So yeah, I'm just going to have to get a rebuild kit for this stupid thing and actually put some effort into trying to fix this problem. So now that the intake doesn't leak, I can hopefully try to, you know, get everything else fine-tuned as much as I can. But yeah, at least it runs still, you know, like for now, till something else major goes. But I'm not sure what the scraping and scratching marks is in that butterfly there, but that does not look good. Like, that can't be a good thing. I don't know how the heck that would have happened. I sure as heck didn't do that. But man, this thing sure shoots the flames out. Anyway, I'll have to fix this properly at some point here in the near future.